So today I'm going to demo a pedal that's new to me as well called the Cathedral Stereo Reverb from Electro-Harmonix. Electro-Harmonix have a really great history of making creative and useful and innovative pedals for guitar players and keeping them at a pretty decent price. Now this pedal is a bit over $200, so I mean it's one of the nicer ones. Or one of the more expensive ones anyway, and so it should be one of the nicer ones. So we'll see today what settings on it are useful and what works best with this pedal. So let's get into some demos. So for the first setting I'm going to try, I've chosen what they're calling the EHX Spring. There's two spring emulations on this digital pedal. There's the Grail Spring, which is from the Holy Grail Reverb that they make, and then the EHX Spring, which is a new one just for this. I find it's a little more accurate. EHX Spring, so that makes sense. And here it is set up for kind of a deeper reverb, just so you get a sense of how ampy it kind of is. So what I've found on this pedal so far in messing around with it is that it's easy to get a bad first impression of the pedal because the knobs really do a lot. So on this spring setting, the knobs kind of do a different thing than they do on the room setting or on the plate or whatever. And I found that when I tried to set up the spring in a sort of a room reverb sort of a way, or a hall reverb, it doesn't sound as good, and it took a little tweaking to make it actually sound like an amp reverb, because it actually has more, just higher settings, more extreme settings than your typical amp reverb. But if you mess around with the blend and the reverb time, the dampening and tone, which makes it brighter and darker, and your feedback, it can get pretty ampy. So I was pretty impressed with that. So let's go on to another setting. So for the second setting, I'm going to go for the plate setting. I've got it a little less subtle than I might have it. This is the type of setting that you could keep on all the time. Same with the spring, actually. If your amp doesn't have a reverb, as this one doesn't, built in, then you could use this pedal to just sort of stay on all the time. But here it is with the plate reverb, a little less subtle than I would keep on all the time. So you can hear how it trails off nicely there. The plate reverb is obviously another emulation of an analog style reverb. Now what I'm going to do is sweep through the tone knob just so you can see what the tone knob does on this pedal. It's can get pretty extreme. So the tone is all the way down now. So it really mutes the reverb. So that's a bit below noon. So and then if I go all the way up, kind of like a shellacked room, like a really big room with really bright, bouncy walls. Back it off a little bit though, and it gets pretty usable. So yeah, that's that setting. Okay, so throughout this demo, I'm gonna go through all the knobs and the things you can do with this one at a time. The next one I'm gonna do here is the hull, and what you can get with the hull is kind of what it sounds like. It sounds like you're in a really big room. So it's a pretty nice setting. Obviously a little more extreme than I would normally get, but if you really want to just sit and space out, this is a cool setting. What I'm going to show you now is there's a tap tempo, tap/infinite button on this, and so what it does is when you tap it a couple of times, that you set the pre-delay. So I've got a pre-delay on here. You hear that? That's an echo caused by the pre-delay, so you can kind of have a slapback sound. It's a kind of a cool feature that you don't get on just every reverb. So yeah, that's a pretty big, pretty huge, long reverb tail. But the other thing you can do with the tap infinite is when you hold it, it does an infinite reverb. So it just keeps whatever note you're playing or whatever chord you're playing when you hold it down, it'll just continue that on. So you have to learn to use it a little bit, because if you hold it down at the loudest point, it's going to be pretty loud. So here's what that sounds like. So you can play over it while it's going. It's a little bit odd to me. There's not really reverb on the sound while you're doing that. That would have been kind of cool to see, but anyway, it's a really cool and unusual feature. So this tap/infinite button has two functions that you don't normally find on these pedals, which you know, if they appeal to you, really make this pedal probably worth the money. So the next setting I'm going to do here is the room setting. Any reverb pedal that I get, I like it to have a blend knob if I can, just because you want to have some of that dry signal in there. And so I'll show you what the blend knob does on this setting. When I start out, it's going to be reverb time pretty close to noon, feedback kind of down, and the blend right in the middle. So here's what that sounds like. So it kind of sounds like a big bathroom or gym or something like that. A little less epic than the hall, so kind of a useful sound for some things. So if I take the reverb time down, real low, so that's kind of nice. It does sound like a pretty small room. If I go all the way up, this pedal is pretty crazy. Kind of starts to run away on you. If you like to do kind of experimental things and get kind of drones going and that kind of thing, this pedal is cool in a couple of ways for that kind of thing. So yeah, pretty cool. That's not holding down the infinite switch. You can still get such a long infinite. You can kind of use it, or such a long decay, sorry. You can kind of use it almost like a delay without any delay to it. Or if you set that pre-delay, kind of some interesting stuff that you can get there with that. The other cool thing is that the blend knob can go what sounds to me like 100% wet. So which sounds pretty cool and would be great for things like if you're reamping something or you're putting a keyboard through it that has two outputs. You could have a fully wet reverb signal to send to the soundman and then a dry signal that the soundman could blend in, or you can blend in on a board. The 100% wet feature is actually more useful than you might think at first when it comes to things like keyboards or recording in the studio. So yeah, that's just another feature on this pedal. So for the next setting here, I'm going to do the reverse delay. To be honest, it's probably not the most useful for me because the initial attack note doesn't have reverb on it, but then it reverses and the reverb kind of comes in. So this is what that sounds like. So here's the Grail Flurb, and so it's like the Holy Grail setting that has a flange to the reverb. This one is another one like the reverse that's kind of thrown in as sort of a little added feature. Most people probably wouldn't use it as their go-to for a pedal like this when you can get a flanger, but it does sound kind of neat as an option, you know, for the studio or whatever. The last setting is the echo, and what that is basically a delay. It takes a little bit of fiddling around, but you can get kind of an analog delay sound out of it. I think this is probably for people who like sort of a bit of echo and slapback in the same, most useful for those kind of people anyway, in the same pedal. Because you can tap the tempo on here, which is pretty cool. So here's what that sounds like. A little more feedback. The dampening darkens up the repeats. So the last thing I'm going to talk about is the people at Electro-Harmonix obviously knew that with a pedal with this many options, it's a little bit overwhelming and scary to think about, you know, using more than one in a live setup, because I mean, you've got 5 knobs that really do a lot, and each knob, each setting needs the knobs at a different setting to really make it authentic and accurate. So it'd be a little overwhelming. So what they've done is they've let you put a preset for each one of the different settings. So this first one I'll show you. If you just push the preset button to, you hold it down to set something into preset mode. So this sound is where my knobs are currently set. It's an echo setting, if you can believe that. Sounds like a reverb, but that's because the pre-delay is really low. But I created a preset for the echo that was the same one as I used in the echo demonstration. And all I have to do is push that knob, and I'm now in the echo preset. So if I push the button again, then I'm back to that other setting. I also created a preset in the Spring, so that's where the settings are on the Spring knobs right now. But I created a preset, so if I push the button now, I'm in preset mode. So that's pretty cool. It'll take a little getting used to in a live context, because you still have to scroll to which preset you want. So if you have a plate, preset, then you have to go to the plate and then push the button. So you can get fast with it, definitely a lot faster than changing all your knobs. And so that's really handy. It might have been nice to have maybe an option of a secondary preset selector switch or something like that to just scroll through them with your foot, or maybe if you kept clicking the preset button, then you'd go through them or something like that. But I mean, that being said, there is a light showing you which one you're on, and there's a light showing you whether you're on preset or not. So they've made it pretty easy to do that. So that's that. So thanks for watching. You can get this pedal any number of places online. From Electro-Harmonix. They do make a lot of pedals that are really great. I think this was an attempt to sort of be one of the, you know, kind of ultimate reverbs from them. It's a little bit higher priced than the Holy Grail and that kind of thing. It's a really neat pedal. It's got a lot of options to it. It can sound a little bit digitally, you know, which can be good or bad depending on what you like. I like that they've added the Spring, because I don't think the Grail Spring really does it for me when it comes to actually using it as a spring reverb, as though it were the reverb on an amp. So what I'm going to leave you with is the one setting I didn't show yet, which is the Grail Spring. It's still nice, but to me it's like a little bit of a Hall mixed with a spring, so it's almost a little too epic to be a spring, and a little like it's almost... It's hard to describe. It's kind of digitally, but I'm glad that they have both in here. This can be a useful pedal. Of course, all pedals should be about inspiration and what they can kind of bring out of you and what they inspire you to play. And this pedal definitely did kind of guide what I played, and that can be really helpful and useful in the songwriting or the arrangement process. So here is the Grail Spring.